back to another episode of the Buckeye Blitz podcast. I'm your host, Chad Stryker. Thanks for taking some time out of your day to join me. I'm doing a Q&A Tuesday on Monday. If you didn't notice, last week I didn't post. I had some dental work done, and I was having a difficult time speaking. So welcome. Thanks for joining me today. I'm back. Just as a reminder, if you have questions or you just want to chat, you can DM me on Twitter. It's under my name, Chad M. Stryker. Um, so I'm sure by now you've heard the big news, and if you haven't, sorry to assume that, but Aaron Scott, cornerback, Springfield, Ohio, has committed to the Ohio State University. Big news for Buckeye fans because it really was Ohio State and Michigan again. And I know that people in Michigan and in Michigan camp were feeling really good because apparently the news broke at some point that Will Johnson had told some of the beat reporters when Aaron Scott had visited Michigan that Aaron said, I could see myself here. But then the very next weekend, he was on campus at Ohio State with Demarion Witten, Bryce West, actually when both of them committed, and then felt very conflicted. And so, welcome to Aaron Scott. I'm glad he's here. That's good news for Ohio State. So a big congratulations to him, and honestly, congratulations to Tim Walton. Like, what a haul the last 2 years. Calvin Simpson-Hunt, Jermaine Matthews, Bryce West, and now Aaron Scott. For a room that had 6 corners last year on scholarship, that's a big change in the right direction to getting back to BIA, best in America. So glad to see it, glad to have them. Big news. And I watched the commitment announcement live on 247 Sports, and when he tossed the Oregon bag and the Ohio State bag and the Michigan bag down, whoever the gentleman did, I commented to my wife. I said, it really looks like there's something inside the Michigan bag because it looked more full. It wasn't flat on the table like the others. And I thought, man, that might not be a good sign. Um, and however, I will caveat this with wasn't able to confirm this because I wasn't there. But there was a rumor floated about, and I didn't put it out on Twitter. I didn't say anything, that Aaron Scott had shown up to the Summerfest in the Shoe Friday night, uh, unexpectedly and kind of incognito, and but like it wasn't out there. I couldn't find any information about it. It was just a rumor going around from a few people that I trust in the inner circle. And it turns out it was true. He was there. But I didn't want to put it out there. And Jeremy Birmingham knew and actually had talked to Aaron Scott. So at any rate, he is a Buckeye. He pulled the jersey out of the Michigan bag, the Buckeye jersey out of the Michigan bag, which, I think people probably were starting to melt down when he tossed the Ohio State bag aside. But as soon as he started to try to reach in it, I had a feeling we were on the up and up. So that was great. Great troll, too. And I listened to Locked On Wolverines early this morning, and they didn't get Bryce West, they didn't get Aaron Scott, they didn't get Tarian Nichols. So they're kind of doing a what do we do now situation, almost like last year with what happened with Ohio State and all the defensive line recruits. So good news there, and happy for us. I do want Ohio State to keep pushing. They need to close Dylan Stewart. They need to close Edric Houston. And I want them to, and now with the news breaking about Miami's NIL not being what people thought it was again, I would not be surprised if Ohio State is back pushing hard for Marquise Lightfoot. So, one to watch. Some questions, that were submitted. I'm circling back. This is kind of my Q&A Monday instead of Q&A Tuesday. If you're wondering, tomorrow evening I will be going live. I've been invited to join another podcast. I'll be putting the link out on my Twitter as soon as I have it to watch us live with Tyler Leedy. And just excited to join that podcast. And we'll be talking about the 2023 season and expectations and where we see things landing. So watch for that. So how many, this was a question, and they came in on Twitter, and I didn't jot down I actually have had similar questions like this, but anyways, it's all leading to the same place. How many of Ohio State's starters could play for Georgia's defense? Now, let me preface this by saying, if Georgia is the standard, and that's the standard we want Ohio State to adhere to on defense, then I'm going to do two comparisons, last year versus this year. So last year's starters versus this year's starters are vastly different in my opinion. So I will say for last year's starters to start on Georgia's defense, maybe JTT, because he was inconsistent and he was a true sophomore, and Tommy Eichenberg would from the front seven. And then in the back end, Sonny Styles. And I think Lathan Ransom would get some run. I think he could play from last year's defense. Now, I just want you to remember, this is not a slight to Mike Hall or Jack Sawyer, but Jack was playing the Jack position. Mike Hall wasn't starting. They were starting Jerron Cage and Teron Vincent and Ty Hamilton. Okay, so keep that in mind. That those, if you look at the draft this year, one Ohio State defensive player got drafted in the top 3 rounds of the draft, Zach Harrison. And I think he could have been a rotational guy in Georgia. But the fact of the matter is that the people that played last year aren't the standard at which Georgia holds themselves. I can tell you right now, as much as I liked the Tanner McAllister transfer to help Jim Knowles on the defense, he was okay. I like him. I thought he was a good kid. But I can tell you right now, just looking at it, and I love this question, Josh Proctor wouldn't have played on that defense. Tanner McAllister wouldn't have played on that defense. Teron Vincent, Jerron Cage, Cam Brown, probably Steel Chambers, and maybe even Rocket Ronnie Hickman, because he had a rough year last year, the second half of the year. Those guys would not play on Georgia's defense. And the way that the draft went tells you everything you need to know about what people thought of the caliber of those players on defense. I will always love them. They're Buckeyes. They're Buckeyes for life. But the fact of the matter is, if the standard is the standard and you want to win championships, that's not going to get it done. Now, this year is a completely different story. I do think Jack Sawyer could start for Georgia as a defensive end. I think JTT has a better year this year, could start. Mike Hall at 3 technique, absolutely. He's not a true, one tech, 300-pound man-eater like Georgia usually uses in the trenches. However, I think he would get some run. Tommy, CJ, Sonny, Davison Igbinosun, obviously already started in the SEC. And I think also given the chance, Kai Stokes, I'm so high on Kai Stokes. I hope he gets to play this year. He is a ball hawk, just amazing, phenomenal athlete. And I think Lathan Ransom, I've been touting him too, has a big year this year. So I hope that answers your question. I think that's what you were trying to get to. I've had a variety of questions that were similar to that, like, hey, the defense has just been kind of meh. And so one of the things that I see a lot is people kind of attacking Jim Knowles. And, if you remember how bad the Kerry Combs defense was, especially against Oregon in 2021, they are light years ahead of where that was. At least Jim Knowles can diagnose what's going on, and the opposing team doesn't run the same play 17 times or whatever it was in a game where it was like a speed option left and they gained 10, 12 yards every single time. that Oregon game was just so disheartening because they just could not get a stop. And it was kind of like the Georgia game this year where, like, if they got one stop, just one in the second half, we were going to win that football game. And as a matter of fact, according to Big Ten Media Days and ACC Media Days, the fact of the matter is they got the call wrong, the hit on Marvin Harrison. Ohio State gets the ball 1st and 10 on the 3-yard line, goes up 18 points, and we're playing for a natty. So keep that in mind. But I do think this year's defense markedly better. They're going to have a good year, and honestly, the biggest difference is it's going to be the corners. Having 6 scholarship corners last year was rough, and then having your top 2 that you consider to be starters banged up most of the year or out 2/3 of the year in the case of Jordan Hancock, that's a big deal. So, and maybe you guys didn't know this, but during the summer they had their backup kicker. His name escapes me right now. He transferred out. He was repping at corner, so they had someone to rep at corner because of the injuries. So that's how decimated Ohio State was in the back half of the defense, in the secondary. So next question was, what does Ohio State need to do better with recruiting, specifically to close on these recruits? And this was directly following KVA. And I will just simply say the KVA situation and the Marquise Lightfoot situation are 2 completely different items. They are their own entity. From what I would say is that KVA landed at Notre Dame because of his beliefs and because of Mama. And, I've heard Berm say, the Jesus and Mama thing, and that's true. Like, and you're not going to be able to flip KVA. It's not going to happen. Just let it go. The Marquise Lightfoot situation was a whole nother one. So that was NIL 1,000,000%. And he's a Midwest kid, and I think by the time signing day gets here, these commitments aren't official. They're just verbals until the early signing day in mid-December. I think Marquise Lightfoot ends up a Buckeye. There's a lot there, a lot to unpack, and I honestly thought on the day, everything was very quiet because I thought they were actually going to push back the commitment because I think he kind of got boxed into a corner and just ended up making a commitment, and I don't think it sticks. I'll just be straight with you. I don't. Everything I'm hearing, I really don't think it sticks. There's too much buzz around it. As far as being a closer and closing things out, I know last year was rough with the Big Four, with not getting Uiagalelei and some of the other guys, Keon Keeley and so on and so forth. And there has been a shift at Ohio State, and I'm not putting this all on the director of recruiting. So Mark Pantoni heads everything up, but he's been promoted. And now he's got a new director of recruiting strategy that's been promoted, Nick Murphy, and Zach Grant as the director of player personnel. So there's been this monumental shift where Mark Pantoni isn't involved as much in the intricate details of things all the time like he used to be. So Pantoni is phenomenal at what he does. But I would liken this to like the last 2 or 3 years of the Urban Meyer era, where Urban became truly a CEO, and he handed off the offense to Ryan Day, he handed off the defense to Jeff Hafley, and so on and so forth. And even with recruiting, he wasn't as involved, and so that's where they are now with, I feel like, Mark Pantoni, where what made him so incredibly successful is his attention to detail and getting into the minutia, but he can't do that now with NIL and all these other things. So I think it's going to take time. They're adjusting. It's going to get better, but just know that, like, that's kind of what's going on, in my opinion, is Mark Pantoni has taken a different level or a different job, and some of the minutia is getting missed that didn't in years past. So And then I'm going to kind of finish up with this question. And as I mentioned, I'll be talking about the 2023 season tomorrow on a separate podcast. And I'll drop the link in the description of this as soon as I have it. And I'll be posting it on Twitter and on Facebook as well. What is your view on how the transfer portal impacts recruiting now? So here's the thing. I'm a little bit on an island with this, I feel like. I personally like the transfer portal as it was intended. Hear me on that. As it was intended. I think a kid should be allowed to transfer one time during their college career without having to sit out. Obviously, if there's something like the Northwestern situation happened or whatever, it shouldn't affect their ability to transfer at all. Like, they should just be allowed. I think how I was at 18 heading into the fall of my freshman year of college versus how I felt heading into the fall of my senior year of college at 22, almost 23 years old. I was far from the same person I was at 18. Not even reminiscent of that the 18-year-old kid that I was. So allowing a kid to realize, hey, maybe I'd rather be closer to home. Maybe my mom's sick. Maybe my coach left that recruited me, and I feel like I'd like to follow him. Plus, some places and cultures, or even atmospheres, just aren't a fit for some kids, and maybe they have a home issue or a family issue, or they need a better support system for mental health, which, like if you think about the Harry Miller situation, there's a million things. So for that reason, I like and support the transfer portal. That said, I don't think it was intended to be like the Tate Martell thing where he transferred like to 4 different schools and never had to sit, and don't like that. As far as how it impacts recruiting, to me at least, it helps the teams at the top. So I'm an Ohio State guy. I like it because, at this point, it's helped Ohio State tremendously. Justin Fields, I'm just going to, you know what I mean? But his was a hardship waiver. But, Josh Simmons this year, Davis Igbinosun, some of those guys. So for OSU, really, really good. It's really helped them a lot. Now, for other teams, like in the MAC or smaller Power 5 teams, it kind of hurts them because let's say, I'm going to use Davis Igbinosun. So he played as a true freshman at Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss is a respected Power 5 school. They're not little sisters of the poor. But if, let's say, Ohio State had a down year recruiting corners, which they did, they had 6 scholarship corners last year. They go out and get Davis Igbinosun. They don't have to wait to coach him up. He's not coming into camp in the fall, and you're hoping that the light comes on quickly. He's played a year. He knows what it's like to be in college football. He's got 2 years at a minimum of eligibility left, and he's plug and play. So it's almost like you're bringing a kid up from the minor leagues, if you equate it to baseball, and you're ready to go. Josh Simmons on the offensive line, another one. On the flip side, for smaller schools, it basically makes them kind of a AAA farm system where they're going to work hard. They're going to develop these kids. They're going to grab these 4 stars, 3 stars, 4 stars, and then somebody's going to give them a call, offer them a $2 million NIL deal in Columbus or Tuscaloosa or Athens or Miami, and they're going to transfer. And in that case, I don't like the NIL, but I do. I feel bad for the schools because you're going to end up with greater disparity than what you had with the haves and have-nots. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents on it. I appreciate the question. I like the question. I'd actually love to talk more about it sometime. Maybe I could get a round table together for some NIL discussions. But at any rate, good news for Ohio State. Aaron Scott's a Buckeye. I hope you guys had a great weekend. I hope you have a great week ahead. I'll be watching to see what happens with KJ Bolden, but after his visit to Auburn, I feel way less good, or if that's a way to say it, I don't feel as good as I used to about the start of July. Especially saying, since he said Auburn's in the top two, which would mean it's either Auburn and Georgia and not Ohio State any longer. At one point, I really thought Ohio State could pull him um, out of Athens, but at this point, I don't think so any longer. So let's close on Dylan Stewart. Let's close on Edric Houston and finish out our month of August in a good way. And hopefully, fingers crossed, close on Brandon Baker. So, and with the number 2 class in the country, and roll into 2023 with some momentum. At any rate, I hope you guys again have a good week. Thanks for taking some time to listen today. I appreciate you guys. And just as a note, I'll be on vacation next week. I won't be around, and I won't be doing my podcast. I will be doing Twitter and keeping up with what's going on, but I won't be going live or doing a recorded podcast. So appreciate you guys. Have a good week. See ya. Go Bucks.